want to talk a very different way in which functional programming comes into this is UTXO versus accounts. So Bitcoin and also Cardano make use of what's called UTXO, unspent transaction outputs, whereas Ethereum uses what's called an account-based way of doing things. And most people use the account-based way of doing things. It seems very natural, but there are actually some advantages to using unspent transaction outputs. So let's go over, and here's a simple example of this. So here is a transaction. This is the origin transaction, and 6 ADA are created and given to Alice, and 4 ADA are created and given to Bob. And you can see that because these are outputs of transaction 0. So when they're not spent yet, they are unspent transaction outputs. So now Alice spends 3 of her ADA by giving them to Charles. She keeps 3 ADA for herself in this transaction. In this transaction, Bill gives 2 ADA to Charles and keeps 2 for himself. And you might think Charles already has enough ADA, but in fact, they're using Charles here to adjudicate something. Charles is a mediator in this case, and Charles mediates and registers another transaction that says, in fact, of those 5 ADA, 2 should belong to Alice and 3 to Bill. So here we've got all these unspent transaction outputs, one that gives 3 to Alice, one that gives 2 to Alice, so Alice has a total of 5, one that gives 3 to Bob, and another that gives 2 to Bob, so that again, Bob has a total of 5. So that is the unspent transaction output way of doing things, UTXO. Here, down in the corner, is what it looks like in an account-based system. So we've got accounts for Alice, Bob, and Charles, and at the beginning, Alice has 6, and Bob has 4, Charles has nothing, and then Alice gives 3 to Charles, so now Alice has 3, Charles has 3, and then Bob gives 2 to Charles, so now Bob has 2, and Charles has a total of 5, and then finally, Charles gives 2 to Alice and 3 to Bob, so both Alice and Bob each have 5, and Charles has nothing. So that's what it looks like with account-based. You might think, oh, that's a lot simpler. But the thing about accounts is you don't know in what order these transactions will appear. So if they appear in some different order, so say this one appears before transaction 2, well, this says that Charles is giving away 5. Charles doesn't have 5 yet, so it becomes invalid. This transaction just doesn't happen. So the reason that UTXOs work so well is transaction 3 here specifically refers to transaction 1 and transaction 2. With UTXO, that's the way it works. And so you know exactly what transaction 3 is going to do. Transaction 3 has to come after these 2 because it refers to them. With accounts, it's just whatever order things happen in, and you don't know what's going to happen. So the result of that is under UTXO, you know exactly how much gas you're going to use. But under accounts, you don't know. Depending on the order things work, your transaction might be invalid, or it might be valid but use 10 or 20 or 30 gas. You don't know. So there's a real advantage to the UTXO approach, which people with functional programming will be familiar with, because everything just specifically refers to something else. You don't depend on the order in which things happen. And our name for that is deterministic.